Welcome guys, welcome to PyHacks. This is part of the Hutsons-Hacks tutorials. Previously we focused on lists. Today we're going to look at tuples, especially around the tuple fundamentals, unpacking and iteration. So just say a little welcome from me. Hi, my name is Gary Hutson, I run Hutsons-Hacks. It's great to have you on board. Please subscribe. Okay, if you've not been following along, the supporting GitHub code is available, which will take you up to this point. We've also got code on the lists, and I'm also going to put out lots more tutorials over the following weeks, so stay posted. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my environment, and we're going to get rid of this. Okay, so today we're going to learn about, well, we're going to learn everything. We're going to learn about creating tuples, looping over tuples, and we'll try and condense it all into perhaps 20-25 minutes. Okay, so what I focus on is the Euro 2020 finalists. Let's call them Euro final. And we're going to set it as a tuple. So previously we set it as a list with square brackets. This time we're going to have curly braces, so parentheses. So I'm going to put England because they're remaining, Switzerland, Spain, Belgium, Italy, Ukraine, Czech Republic, and Denmark. So here we've created our first tuple or tuple. It's got a size of 8, as you can see on the left hand side, on the right hand side. So switching back to the Python editor for myself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to print the type of this tuple. Okay, you can see the type has now been returned as a tuple class. So that's essentially how you create your first tuple. And the reason you create it as a tuple is because it's immutable. So objects in that storage in that tuple cannot be changed. They cannot be added to or amended. So this is an important concept around potentially, let's think about scope in other programming languages. You probably want to make this unchangeable because you don't want people to have that level of access to add additional items to it. And it certainly makes sense in this case because these are the finalists in terms of the current stage as of the 1st of July as I'm speaking now. Obviously this might change going forward, so some of the teams will be removed. But as of now, I don't want this tuple to change, and I don't want to give people the ability to add to it. So if I'm accessing tuple items, so you can do it the same way as you did the lists. So we're just going to call this EU for now. I'm going to have a shorthand so I don't have to keep typing this all the time. Euro. So EU is the same tuple, and perhaps we could even delete the original one if we wanted to. So let's do that. So I'm just going to keep this as EU for now. And we're going to we're going to do a negative indexing on. Let's print that out. So we're going to print the last element in that tuple. And you can see we've got Denmark that's been returned there. You can see it in the console window here. So then let's do a range. Let's print a range of values. So here we're going to go EU and we're going to go 0 to 3. So that range is England, Switzerland, and Spain. You can see from 0 index 1, 2. So 0 to 2. So it will stop at the third item, but not including the third item. So it'll bring back everything before this third item here. So 0, 1, and 2. Okay. Another way to do this would be just to use a semicolon. The colon. We could go EU, and we could go, I don't know, start from the second onwards. Okay, so now we've got the second onwards, 0, 1, 2, Spain, Belgium, Italy, all the way to the end. Reversing that round, we could go the other way on this side, which will give us England, Switzerland, and Spain, which is the same result here as this. That is the same as that. And if you wanted to go a bit further on, just go 5. It just saves us having to put 0 here. So give us everything before that and up to 5. Okay, makes sense. You can also search between a range of negative indexes. So this is achieved by print EU. So I say EU, but it's the cup finalist. So 03 to 01. So what is this doing? So from 3 back, that's where you'll see Ukraine. 1, 2, 3. Give me Ukraine. Start at Ukraine, -3 from the end. Ukraine to -1, Czech Republic. So you essentially say -3 is Ukraine. If I had -0, that'd give me nothing. But if I went to the end of the list index, say 8, it's going to give me from -3 to the last item. Another way you could write that is len of the EU. Yeah. So give it me from -3 to the total length of the tuple. One last thing we could do is just check that an item exists inside our tuple. So and this is the way we could do it. If England, so we're using an if condition statement, in EU, print yes, England exists. As you can see, that's brought back yes, England exists. Okay, can you update tuples? No. They're immutable, they can't be changed, you can't add to them. But there is a hack. This is Hutsons-Hacks after all. So we're going to use this heuristic or a couple of heuristics that I've created from learned experience. So I'll copy some that I prepared earlier and then take you through them. So we're just going to put EU here, EU. So we'll call this copy of a euro and that'll create a new tuple. So let's F9 through it. Copy of a euro, so it's going to run that line. Oops. So F9 through that. Then what you do is, this is the hack, you convert that tuple to a list. So now we've got a list. You then say at item 7, replace Denmark with Sweden, so at the 7th index. Still as a list. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use the tuple command to convert it back to a tuple type data structure. You can see it's now changed to tuple, and if I print that out, I've now got Sweden on the end. So essentially what you end up doing is creating a copy, converting your existing tuple to a list, using list indexing and assigning a value to Sweden, and then change it back to a tuple. Another way you can do this, so second hack, is using the append statement. So I'm going to use copy of euro again. I'm going to use EU here. So I'm going to get rid of this original one here, delete. Euro append EU. So I'll take you through this line by line again. That removes it from the memory. EU is going to make a copy. We can then convert it to a list. Euro append's now been converted to a list. We're going to append Germany, and then it appends Germany onto that list. And then we're going to add it back to a tuple. And now you've got an appended item on the end. So you've actually managed to add an item to that list. That's another way you could do it. Another way is to add tuples together. So that's allowed. So I'm going to get rid of that euro append again. Here we're going to set this to EU because that's the copy of the long name that we've provided here. I'll take you through line by line. So we're going to go create this EU again, euro add. Got this euro add here, sorry, this variable. Then we're going to set a new value. So this is going to create a new tuple in memory because we've passed it in parentheses. We've passed a one element tuple. So there's an important rule around one element tuples. You need to remember to add a comma at the end. Otherwise it doesn't know how to work with this. So you can see now a new value has been created and it's a one item tuple called Germany with one value. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to add those two together. So euro add. So now with this euro add, we've got 9 items and the end item will be Germany. So let's print that, Denmark and Germany. So that's another way to do it. You get your original tuple and instead of converting it through a list and then appending or adding by index, you add it to an individual tuple, or that could be a multi-item tuple if you have multi-items in there. Another important concept around tuples is Plum Packing. Okay, so tuple unpacking is something you would do a lot in Python. So the rule is the number of items in the tuple should match the number of variables you want to unpack. Team 1, Team 2. So I know there's in EU there's 8, so we're going to have to make 8 teams. And this is essentially just 8 variables in memory. You use this a lot with things like scikit-learn when you're creating training test splits. You tend to unpack the training and test split from scikit-learn. Again, that's probably a bit too advanced for this stage, but it does get used a lot. So now what this is going to do, once I hit this line, it's going to go add the first item in this tuple, England, to this variable team 1, the second item, Switzerland, to team 2, the third item, Spain, to team 3, and so on. I've F9'd that, and you can see that successfully ran. And now we've got team 1, England, size 7, it means it's got 7 characters, 11, Switzerland, 5, Spain, 4, Belgium, 5, Italy, 7, Ukraine, 14, Czech Republic, and 7, Denmark. And it's created those variables now in memory. So we could then work with those variables. We could create a printout saying, these are the winners. We're going to do that in the next step. Essentially, that's as simple as tuple unpacking is. Every time you create a tuple, you pack it. That's what it's known as. And then when you want to extract the elements from a tuple, you essentially unpack it via passing each one of the variable names within parentheses equal to the original tuple. Okay, let's loop now through a tuple. So iterating through a tuple, and we'll use two examples of looping through a tuple. And again, this section is going to be less long than the list section because there's more methods that you can utilize on a list than a tuple. So what I'm going to use is a special command called enumerate. So enumerate's an iterator, which is a bit more advanced, and we will come on to these again. But what enumerate allows you to do, it allows you to, for each element in this list, it'll assign a unique index. So this is how we implement it. So initially we could go for team in Euro, let's say EU. So if you wanted to do the longhand for simplicity, so all the elements in that tuple, it's going to loop through them. So this EU is going to go through each element, each one at a time. So the team is the iterator variable. So for each team in my list of finalists or in that tuple, do something. So we're going to create a print, a customized print. We're going to say the Euro 2020 team is, and we're going to create the format statement at the end of this, and we're going to pass in team. It auto completes in Spider, which is quite nice. It knows what you're going to pass through to it. So let's run these lines. Oh, I've got rid of it. I've got to use EU. I remember I deleted it, didn't I? For team in that EU list, so each of the teams. So for each team in that whole list of teams, print every time it iterates through that what the current team is, F9. So as you can see on my console window, I've got a nice output saying the Euro 2009 team is England. It tells us what the value is in that tuple, but it doesn't actually tell us at which index that value occurs. So this is where enumerate comes in. So all I need to do is add two more things to this statement. So enumerate, you wrap it around the iterable, which is EU. And then I need to add another element. So let's call it iter. So for the iterator. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to add another section to this. This is so is this is found at index. So wrap a placeholder again. And then in that placeholder, so the kind of general trick is the first placeholder needs to be the first command, team should be passed to that one. And then the second command is going to be iter, okay? Because that's the unique iterating ID. So expanding that out, now if I run this line, you can see I've got a bit more information that was printed earlier. So this is really handy. You could really get rid of this print statement if you wanted to. You could go print iter and team together, and you get like an ID and the current team that is associated to that ID. Again, each method's fine. I quite like actually printed out something with a bit more context. But then from that, you could probably iterate through it and append it to a list if you wanted to again and do something similar. So I could loop through that tuple, and if I had an empty list that I wanted to fill then and start to work with it and start to edit things, I could also do something with this iter. So with this team, I could go append. Sorry, empty list, append. And let's append the team. Yeah. So I'll run these lines. And now I've got a list filled with those values alongside a nice message. So not only is it looping through that tuple, it's also creating me an empty list, a new list. So teams list, and I can now add, amend, and do stuff to that list as well. Whereas again, I keep saying this, a tuple is immutable, so you can't do anything, you can't really add to it after that, apart from using the hacks that I've demonstrated here. A way to do this and achieve the same output or the same steps in a while loop, and again, they're not normally used for looping, but I'll show you looping over lists and tuples. You normally use it for things like computer vision, if you're trying to capture a webcam, etc. So with a for statement, you're essentially looping through until something becomes false. So he's saying while it's true, so while there are elements in a list, so true, 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 for the length of that list. So it'll go true, true, true 8 times because these exist in that list. When it gets to false, terminate the loop, essentially, and that's what happens. With a while statement, it's in reverse. It says, while it's true, so while everything's true, do something until it becomes false, and you'll see that in a second. So it assumes it to be true initially, whereas the reverse is true of a for loop. it assumes things to be false until they become true, so until the end terminate. So I equals 0. I'm going to while I is less than the length of EU. So while it's true, print EU. I'm going to print each index of that data, that tuple. And then I'm going to, because I've had to start it at the first index here, I've got to make me iterate to start somewhere, otherwise you end up creating an infinite loop. Then I've got to do what's called an iteration. So I've got to actually iterate through that. So I've got to append each time. So every time it runs through this loop, it's going to start from the 0th index. It's then going to add 1 to that, meaning the next index is 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, until it runs out. And that's essentially the way that you'd achieve the same result in a while loop. The one last thing to add is joining a tuple. And that's it for tuples. Oops, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to create a joined tuple. Okay, so we've got this additional euro add tuple that we've created. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add that euro add together with the EU tuple. It'll essentially create a duplicate, so it'll create an 8 by 9. So you get a 17th element tuple, so 17 elements in that tuple. So joined EU plus euro add and print joined, and that's as simple as it is. That'll then append those tuples together. So if you look at that joined, I've got now 17 items in that joined, and it'll be England, Switzerland, Spain, the items of the original list. And then what it's going to do is it's going to append that list again. And again, that's how you join two tuples together. Might be interesting if you've got like columns that you need to unite later on in data sets, or if you're working with pandas. Again, it's got a lot of utility. But that is a very quick overview of tuples. Like you said, there's not many methods to working with tuples. It's a little of a shorter demonstration than we've previously had. But I hope you enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one. In the next one, we're going to look at dictionaries, and then we're going to finally cover the last, perhaps data structure in Python, sets. And like you say, they're the main data structures in Python. So we've covered lists so far. We've just done tuples. We'll do dictionaries and then sets. Okay, catch you on the flip side, guys. Have a good one, and speak to you again soon.